Locked away in private vaults and museum cases are the rarest revolvers of the American frontier. Weapons that vanished for generations, then reappeared with price tags over $1 million. These weren't movie props or mass-made six-shooters. They were hand-forged prototypes, presentation pieces, and battlefield survivors that defined the real Wild West. One was built in a Confederate workshop running out of iron. Another was engraved by a New York master for a Union officer. And one, a Sheriff's Colt 44, fired a single shot that ended an outlaw's life and later sold for more than $6 million, the highest price ever paid for a gun. This is the countdown of the 12 rarest Wild West revolvers ever found, ranked by their documented sale price, their craftsmanship, and the legends that made them priceless. The further we go, the stranger, rarer, and more valuable they become. Let's begin with number 12. Number 12, the Augusta Machine Works Confederate Revolver. In 1862, as Union armies closed in and Southern industry began to collapse, a small workshop in Augusta, Georgia, started building revolvers from whatever scrap iron it could find. It was called the Augusta Machine Works, and its gunsmiths were trying to copy the Colt Dragoon by hand without the machinery or materials to do it properly. Each revolver was an act of defiance. The barrels were rough, the grips were hand-carved, the frames were filed by torchlight. Yet they fired, crude, heavy, and deadly at close range. Historians believe fewer than 100 Augusta revolvers were ever completed before the factory was abandoned. Today, only a few survivors exist, almost all locked in private collections. When one surfaced at Christie's, it carried an estimate of $50,000 to $60,000. An extraordinary sum for a weapon that originally cost about 12 Confederate dollars to make. Every mark on its steel tells the story of a nation fighting with its last reserves, a place where craftsmanship gave way to survival. The Augusta Machine Works revolver isn't elegant, and it was never meant to be. But it's one of the rarest handguns ever forged on American soil. A reminder that even in the final days of the Confederacy, someone was still trying to build a weapon strong enough to change fate. Number 11. Wyatt Earp's Colt Single Action Army. By the early 1880s, Tombstone, Arizona was a mining boomtown teetering between law and chaos. And at its center stood Wyatt Earp, a lawman whose name would become shorthand for the Wild West itself. Like most peace officers of the time, Earp carried the Colt Single Action Army 45, a revolver that combined simplicity, reliability, and sheer intimidation. One particular Colt, serial number 5686, has long been attributed to Earp. It's the gun said to have been on his hip during the gunfight at the OK Corral in 1881, when he and his brothers faced off against the Clantons and McClorys in one of the most famous 30 seconds in frontier history. Whether that revolver truly fired in that alley is still debated, but its chain of custody is documented, passed down through Earp's descendants, verified by early firearms historians, and eventually auctioned in 2014. It sold for $225,000, proof that provenance alone can turn a standard-issue sidearm into a priceless artifact. The Colt Single Action Army was produced by the tens of thousands, yet only a handful can be tied to men who actually lived the legends. This one bears the wear of daily use, a blued barrel worn silver at the muzzle, walnut grips smoothed by a decade of holster draws. For collectors, it represents more than Wyatt Earp's legend. It's the tangible connection between myth and fact, between the gunslinger Hollywood invented and the hard, dust-covered lawman who really walked the streets of Tombstone. Not every rare revolver shines with gold engraving or perfect polish. Some, like Earp's Colt, are valuable precisely because they survived the West as it truly was. Rough, uncertain, and unforgettable. Number 10. Wild Bill Hickok's Smith & Wesson model, number 2, Army. Long before the legends of Wyatt Earp or Billy the Kid, there was James Butler, Wild Bill Hickok, the prototype of the Western gunfighter. By the 1860s, Hickok was already famous for his accuracy, his flamboyant style, and his coolness under fire. He was the first man the newspapers called a shootist. While he carried many sidearms during his lifetime, one stood out for both elegance and history. The Smith & Wesson Model No. 2 Army Revolver, a 7-shot, .32 rimfire revolver, introduced during the Civil War. Unlike the heavy black powder Colts, the S&W No. 2 used metallic cartridges, making it cleaner, faster, and more reliable, the cutting-edge technology of its time. Hickok was known to carry a pair of these revolvers with ivory grips, worn cross-draw style in polished holsters. It was with pistols like these that he earned his reputation. From the duel in Springfield, Missouri in 1865, where he killed gambler Davis Tutt with a single shot at 75 yards, to his final card game in Deadwood a decade later. One of Hickok's documented Smith & Wessons, verified through period photographs and family lineage, surfaced at auction and sold for $235,000. Not for its gold or engraving, but for the hand that once drew it. The revolver itself is small, delicate even, only 2 pounds of steel and walnut. Yet it helped create the image of the American gunfighter that would echo for generations. To collectors, it isn't just a weapon. It's the moment the Wild West stopped being a frontier and became a legend. Wild Bill Hickok's revolver is rare not because of how few were made, but because of who dared to carry it. A man whose life and death defined what it meant to draw first and aim straight. Number 9. The Pinch Frame, first-year Colt single-action Army. In 1873, the Colt Company unveiled a revolver that would define the American frontier, the Colt Single-Action Army, also called the Peacemaker. It was simple, rugged, and perfectly balanced, chambered for the new .45 Colt cartridge. Within months, it was adopted by the U.S. Cavalry, and soon after, it was on the hips of soldiers, outlaws, and settlers across the West. But before mass production began, Colt made a small batch of early test models. Collectors call them pinch frame Colts, named for the distinct narrow curve at the top of the frame where the barrel meets the front sight. Only the first few hundred revolvers ever built had this design, and most were quickly replaced or modified when production changed. That subtle difference makes them some of the rarest peacemakers on Earth. These first-run guns were built by hand in Hartford, Connecticut, before Colt's assembly lines were fully standardized. Each one bears a low serial number, sometimes under 200, and often shows early proof marks and machining that vanished from later production. In 2014, a first-year civilian pinch-frame revolver, fully documented, serial number 173, sold at heritage auctions for $284,410. It wasn't engraved, it wasn't gold-plated, it was valuable simply because it was first, the prototype that launched a legend. To hold one of these early Colts is to hold the exact moment when precision met mythology. The Peacemaker would go on to arm both lawmen and outlaws for half a century. But the pinch frame is where that story truly began, a mechanical birth certificate for the gun that won the West. Number 8. The Texas Ranger, Sam Wilson's Colt Walker. Before the Peacemaker, before the cartridge era, there was one revolver that stood above all others, the Colt Walker. Introduced in 1847, it was a weapon born directly from war. Texas Ranger Captain Samuel H. Walker collaborated with Samuel Colt to design it, a 6-shot, .44 caliber black powder revolver with unmatched stopping power. It was also enormous, weighing 4.5 pounds, firing a lead ball powerful enough to bring down a horse. Colt produced just over 1,000 Walkers, all by hand, at Eli Whitney's factory in Connecticut. Many exploded from overloading or broke in the field, and only a fraction survived. One of the most famous survivors belonged to Texas Ranger Sam Wilson. Issued during the Mexican-American War, Wilson's Walker saw real combat before disappearing into private hands for over a century. When it resurfaced, fully documented and remarkably preserved, it sold for $920,000, one of the highest prices ever paid for a military handgun. Every Colt Walker is rare, but a Ranger-issued example is almost mythical. Its steel frame bears the marks of frontier service, holster wear, drag lines, powder burn staining, each a signature of the man who carried it. The Walker revolver represented the absolute limit of what a black powder sidearm could be. Massive, slow to reload, yet devastatingly effective. It bridged the gap between the cavalry pistol and the repeating revolver, a weapon so powerful it shaped Colt's future and the legend of the Texas Rangers alike. Sam Wilson's Walker isn't just a relic. It's the physical proof that even in 1847, America was already building legends in steel. The deeper we go, the rarer these revolvers become. If you think a Ranger's Walker is impressive, wait until you see the one that crossed the Atlantic and came back worth nearly $2 million. Number 7. The Colt Patterson No. 5 holster model. Before there were peacemakers, before the Walkers, there was the Colt Patterson, the first repeating revolver ever successfully produced in America. Samuel Colt introduced it in 1836 at just 21 years old, and it was a radical leap forward. A 5-shot single-action percussion revolver that didn't need to be reloaded after every shot. The model that defined the design was the No. 5 holster model, the largest and most powerful version of the Patterson line. It was elegant and delicate with a long barrel, fluted cylinder, and slim grip, more a piece of clockwork than a weapon of war. Yet it gave its users an almost unfair advantage in a time when everyone else was still fumbling with single-shot pistols. Only a few hundred Patterson No. 5s were ever built. They were expensive, fragile, and far ahead of their time, which nearly bankrupted Colt's first company. But those who used them, including the early Texas Rangers, swore by them. In their hands, the revolver's 5-shot firepower turned small bands of Rangers into forces that could hold off entire groups of Comanches or bandits. Because of that reputation, surviving Pattersons became sacred objects in the world of American firearms. In 2011, a documented Colt Patterson No. 5 holster model sold for $977,500 at Rock Island Auction, nearly $1 million for a gun built before the invention of the telegraph. Every Colt revolver that came after, from the Walker to the Peacemaker, traces its lineage directly to the Patterson. It wasn't just the first of its kind, it was the spark that ignited everything that followed. Number 6. The Colt Walker, E Company No. 120. In 1847, Samuel Colt's young company was reborn on the back of a single design, the Colt Walker revolver. It was the largest and most powerful black powder sidearm ever issued by the U.S. military, built at the request of Captain Samuel H. Walker and carried by the mounted soldiers of the Mexican-American War. Colt manufactured just 1,000 Walkers under a government contract divided among 5 companies. A through E. Each revolver was individually numbered and hand-fitted, its parts stamped with the soldier's company mark. Most were destroyed in service. Many burst under the strain of their heavy powder charge. By the war's end, only a handful survived. One of them, marked E Company No. 120, became the most famous survivor of them all. It was the final Walker completed for military use, documented through original ordnance records and verified by serial number. When it appeared at Rock Island Auction, it drew global attention from historians and collectors alike. The hammer fell at $1,035,000, making it one of the most valuable Marshall revolvers ever sold. Holding a Walker is like holding a piece of controlled chaos. Its massive cylinder could unleash power that rivaled early rifles, but it demanded respect, a weapon so overbuilt and unpredictable that it forged the very reputation of the Colt brand. The E Company No. 120 Walker isn't just rare, it's the endpoint of an era. The last of the giants built when firepower still meant iron, powder, and nerve. Here's a question for you. If you could own just one of these revolvers, which would it be? The Soldier's Walker or the Outlaw's Colt? Tell me in the comments and see if your pick makes the top 3. Number 5. The Colt Model 1849 Pocket Gold-Inlaid Presentation Model. By the 1850s, Colt's revolvers weren't just tools of survival, they were symbols of status. Among them, none became more popular than the Colt Model 1849 Pocket Revolver. It was small, reliable, and easy to conceal. The pistol carried by travelers, gamblers, and city gentlemen long before the peacemaker ever existed. Over 300,000 were produced, but a few were made to an entirely different standard. These were the presentation models, built by Colt's finest engravers and inlaid with gold scrollwork, acid-etched panels, and ivory grips. They were often gifted to military officers, heads of state, or influential businessmen, each one a handcrafted masterpiece from Hartford, Connecticut. One of these presentation Colts, a fully documented gold-inlaid 1849 pocket, surfaced at Rock Island Auction in 2012. It sold for just over $1.1 million, a record-setting figure for a revolver barely 9 inches long. Its perfection wasn't functional, it was political. Colt understood that beauty could sell as effectively as power, and these presentation pistols carried his name into the hands of the world's elite. Every line of engraving and every flake of gold leaf tells the story of a company turning industrial craftsmanship into art. While soldiers carried the big dragoons and walkers across battlefields, the men who financed those wars carried this, a revolver designed to impress more than to kill. The 1849 pocket presentation model proved that in the West, a revolver could be more than a weapon. It could be a statement of prestige and a fortune in steel. Number 4. The Milliken Colt Dragoon, 3rd model presentation grade. In the years after the Walker revolver, Colt refined his design into something more practical, the Colt Dragoon. It kept the same .44 caliber punch but trimmed the size and improved the balance, making it the preferred sidearm of soldiers and officers across the expanding frontier. Among these massive revolvers, one stands above the rest. The Milliken Dragoon, a 3rd model Colt Dragoon presented around 1855 to Colonel John Milliken, a prominent Ohio cavalry officer. It was unlike any other. Every surface gleamed with factory engraving and silver plating, the grips inlaid with carved ivory, the barrel etched with floral scrolls, and Colt's signature in flowing script. This wasn't a weapon for the saddle. It was a statement piece, the very definition of prestige in steel. Decades later, the revolver reappeared in exceptional condition, still housed in its original velvet-lined case with all accessories intact. When it went to Rock Island Auction in 2019, collectors knew it was special. The hammer dropped at $1.66 million, setting a record for any Colt Dragoon ever sold. The Milliken Dragoon represents the exact moment Colt stopped building just for war and started building for legacy. It's the bridge between the rough practicality of the battlefield and the art of presentation-grade gunsmithing. A revolver meant not to be fired, but admired. If the Walker was brute strength, the Milliken Dragoon was refinement, proof that even in the mid-19th century, a 6-shooter could rival a crown jewel. Number 3. The Black Beauty Nimshka engraved Colt Single Action Army. By the late 1800s, the Colt Single Action Army had become more than a weapon. It was the symbol of American identity, the revolver of soldiers, sheriffs, and showmen alike. But a few were transformed from working guns into pure art, engraved by the masters who turned steel into sculpture. Foremost among them was Louis D. Nimshke, the most celebrated firearms engraver of his age. Working out of New York, Nimshke's scrollwork appeared on rifles and revolvers owned by generals, royalty, and magnates. His finest surviving Colt, known today as the Black Beauty, is a masterpiece of 19th century craftsmanship. Built in the late 1870s, it features deep relief engraving across every surface. Blued steel so dark it borders on black, and gold inlay so fine it seems painted by hand. Its balance of elegance and restraint marks it as Nimshka's work at the height of his career, powerful, intricate, and unmistakably American. When this revolver appeared at Rock Island Auction in 2025, collectors called it the most flawless Colt single-action army ever offered. The final bid reached $1,685,000, setting a modern record for an engraved revolver. Unlike the guns carried through dust and battle, the Black Beauty never fired in anger. Its purpose was different: to prove that a firearm could be a masterpiece, that artistry and engineering could share the same frame. The Peacemaker may have conquered the West, but Nimshka's Black Beauty captured its soul and turned it into gold. Number 2, the Danish Sea. Captain Colt Walker, civilian issue. Most Colt Walkers were built for war, but a few, fewer than 10, were set aside by Samuel Colt himself as civilian presentation models, gifted to dignitaries, business partners, and foreign officers. One of those rare revolvers found its way across the Atlantic to a Danish sea captain in 1847, and against all odds, it survived. Known today as the Danish Sea Captain Walker, this revolver remained in the same family for more than a century, passed down through generations who understood exactly what they possessed. Unlike its military counterparts, it was kept in its original rosewood case, complete with powder flask, bullet mold, and percussion caps. Every accessory preserved as if time had stopped. When it surfaced at Rock Island Auction, collectors called it the finest Colt Walker ever discovered. Its bluing was intact, its engraving crisp, the bore nearly pristine. It was not a relic of battle, but of history itself, the only Walker known to survive with both case and documentation intact. The final bid reached $1,840,000, placing it among the most valuable firearms ever sold. To hold it is to see the Colt legend frozen at its birth, a revolver that left America during the age of sailing ships and returned as one of the crown jewels of the collecting world. Where most Walkers tell the story of war, this one tells the story of endurance, a weapon that conquered rust, time, and distance to become the finest example of Colt's genius still in existence. Only one revolver in history ever crossed from fact into legend, a standard Colt 44 that became the most valuable gun ever sold. Stay with me. Number 1 isn't just rare, it changed the West forever. Number 1, Pat Garrett's Colt single-action army, the gun that killed Billy the Kid. On the night of July 14, 1881, in Fort Sumner, New Mexico, Sheriff Pat Garrett stepped into a darkened room and pulled the trigger on a legend. The revolver he used was a Colt single-action army .44, standard military issue, blued steel with walnut grips, the same model carried by thousands of men across the West. But the moment Garrett fired, that ordinary gun became something else entirely. The weapon that ended the life of William H. Bonney, better known as Billy the Kid. For decades, historians debated which Colt Garrett actually held that night. The evidence, however, is solid. Serial number 55093, issued in 1880, matches the description in Garrett's records and early newspaper reports. It stayed in his family's possession for generations, eventually passing through lawmen, collectors, and museum curators until it resurfaced at Bonham's auction in 2021. When the bidding closed, the price was $6,030,312, the highest amount ever paid for a firearm in recorded history. The sale wasn't about metal or mechanics. It was about a single gunshot that echoed for more than a century. The revolver itself is unremarkable to the eye. Worn finish, faint cylinder etching, standard cavalry markings. But its history is burned into every inch of steel. It's the physical link between fact and folklore, between the real West and the myth Hollywood built around it. Billy the Kid's story ended in that dark room, but Pat Garrett's Colt ensured the myth never would. It stands as the most valuable revolver ever found, a weapon that didn't just take a life, but created a legend. From the crude iron of the Confederate South to the gold-inlaid masterpieces of Colt's factory, these revolvers tell the real story of the American frontier, built by hand, carried through war, and now worth more than gold. Each one is a reminder that history isn't written in books, it's forged in steel. And though the West is long gone, its legends still echo through every surviving gun. If you want to uncover more of the truth behind the myth, stick around. The next story might be even rarer than the guns that made this one.